And I got to tell you, the love of the Lord, it does endure. It is faithful in every circumstance. So I'm going to slow it down a little bit, but I encourage you just to lift your hands and worship God as you'd like to do tonight.
For having me tonight. I gotta say, first I did start off here in New York, as you know. Just to give you a little bit of background about me, I first came to this church kind of by accident, I guess you could say. My uncle Stephen, who's now a pastor today, he'd first gotten saved and he had found out about this church, and he had invited me to a special event in the children's church. It was a a Western Sunday of some sort, from what I remember. Oh, that's what it was. A holla hoedown. And he invited me to come, and, I was kind of a girly girl, still am. So it's not like I love to dress up as a cowboy or anything, but I love to dress up in costume. And so he had invited me to come, and he brought me. It was the first time really I'd ever been to a church other than like a Catholic mass on a holiday or something like that. And what do you know? I showed up, and it was the wrong day. And so I'm all dressed in Western, and nobody else is. So it's really a miracle that I came back, because that's kind of scarring as a 6-year-old to come in and be dressed in total Western, bandana, the hat, the whole deal, and nobody else is. So that's how I first started coming, and then I really enjoyed the time that I had, so I did end up coming back the next week, which was, in fact, the Western Sunday. I made my uncle promise me that he wasn't going to do that to me again. So that's how I ended up here. And it was the beginning of my relationship with Christ when I first gave my heart to the Lord, and just really started to figure out who I was in God. And my time here was kind of short. I was here, I guess, about maybe a year and a half, and then I ended up moving up to Kentucky when I was 7, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that as I get going tonight. But first, I want you to start off tonight. Go ahead and stand up. I think I lost the mic up here in the monitors. I don't know. Stand up and say, I am designed.
I am designed.
Turn to your neighbor and say it with confidence. I am designed.
I am designed.
Now that's a pretty powerful statement to make, that you are designed, because in fact every single one of you has been designed. You can go ahead and have a seat. If you want to open up your Bibles tonight to the book of Judges. Now I'm sure you're saying, oh my, the book of Judges, is she really going there? I don't even know where that book is. It's in the Old Testament. I do have something exciting to share with you tonight. First, I want to say that when I moved away to Kentucky, I moved at the age of 7. I had just lost my mother. My mom died in a car accident when I was 7. And everything that I'm going to tell you tonight, all the things that I experienced and that I went through as a child and as a teenager and as a young adult, every single thing was molding me into who I am, and every single thing that I went through was God's process of molding me into who He has made me to be. And so I moved to Kentucky when I was 7, and that's where I spent most of my life growing up. I met my husband when we were in 6th grade. Say hi, Brandon. Yeah, 6th grade. So it's kind of funny because I'm a teacher now. I teach 6th grade history, and so when all the little girls come to me crying because so-and-so was so mean to them, I just kind of laugh on the inside, because I was that girl once, and they do grow up one day, so I'm living proof of that. But tonight I'm going to talk to you about your destiny and what you've been designed to do. And all through my life, every single thing that I did in school and in my youth group, I was really involved in the arts. I sang in the choir, I was on the dance team, I was in the drama team. I was very artsy, very artistic. I always felt like that was something that I was supposed to do. Very highly involved in my youth group. Even as a teenager, I was one of the leaders that was kind of on staff, I guess you could say. I was one of the leaders in the youth group, and just always had a calling for young people on my life. And as I grew older, sometimes the older we get, the scarier things seem to actually step out and do. When you're younger, you're fearless and you can do anything, and then the older you get, reality kind of sets in a little bit. So tonight we're going to turn to chapter 6 in the book of Judges. Chapter 6. I'm going to be talking to you about Gideon tonight. Anybody heard of Gideon? All right, good. He doesn't get talked about quite as much as he should, because his story is pretty phenomenal. We're in Judges chapter 6, and just to kind of give you a little bit of background as you're finding that, at this point in history, and like I said, I am a history teacher, so I do enjoy all the history of it too. The Israelites, anything you know about the Israelites, they had gone through one disaster after another. I mean, they would turn to God, and then they would turn their back on God and start worshiping other idols, and then they'd question God, and oh, do you really exist? Why did you bring us here? And it was just one thing after another. I mean, they'd been delivered from the Egyptians walked across the Red Sea and it parted. I'm pretty sure that would convince me, if I saw the Red Sea open up, that I would think that God is real and God can do anything. But as time passed on, that story didn't quite make it all the way down in the effect that it originally was. I mean, they heard the story, they knew the story, but they had lost touch with who God was. And so at this point, God had allowed the Midianites to come in and take over the Israelites. Things were really bad for them, and they were persecuting them. They took their food supply. So at this point, all the Israelites, they would go hide in the caves and in the mountains to try to stay away from the Midianites, to protect their food supply and protect their children. And so we're going to start it off in verse 11. And it says, "Then the angel of the Lord came and sat beneath the great tree at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash of the clan of Abiezar. Gideon, son of Joash, was threshing wheat at the bottom of a winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, 'Mighty hero, the Lord is with you.' 'Sir,' Gideon replied, 'if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And where are all the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say the Lord brought us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites.' Then the Lord turned to him and said, 'Go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you.' 'But Lord,' Gideon replied, 'how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my entire family.' The Lord said to him, 'I will be with you, and you will destroy the Midianites as if you were fighting against one man.'" That to me is pretty incredible. There are a couple things here that I want you to see. The first thing is that God said, "Go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you." Well, at that point, Gideon was looking at his circumstances. He wasn't looking at his potential. He was looking at what was right in front of him. And one thing that I want you to know tonight is that your divine identity is not defined by the reality of your circumstances. What you see right now is not all that God has for you. It's much bigger than that. And unfortunately, Gideon was afraid of what God was telling him because it just seemed bigger than what he was. He was just a farmer. And in life, sometimes we're more afraid when God has called us and we know what we're supposed to do than when we don't know what to do at all. Sometimes we feel like we'd be better off if we had no idea what we were supposed to do with our life, because when we know what we're supposed to do, there's a great weight that comes with that. And every single person in this room was destined for something. God designed each person. See, there's a difference between being made and being designed. See, I can go home and I can make chicken for dinner. But I didn't design that chicken. I didn't put every little piece of it together. I didn't design the recipe that I'm going to make. I'm just following a recipe. See, God designed every single person in this room differently. Every person was called for a specific purpose. And unfortunately, when we look at our circumstances, that's all we can see. We can't see the big picture, but there's a lot more. His divine identity was not a label of his circumstance. So in order for God's concept to become a reality, he had to respond to his call. God was trying to show him not where he was, but where he ought to be. Something else I want you to see about this story is that Gideon was threshing wheat at the winepress. Just to give you a little bit of background on what it meant to thresh wheat, the way that they would do that is they would go to the threshing floor to thresh the wheat. This was the process of beating this wheat, breaking it down. All the false wheat, what was called the tares, would fall off the wheat, and then they would blow away in the wind, and what would be left was the perfect wheat, exactly what it was intended to be used for. And so they would do this in the threshing floor, because this is where they had the proper tools to do this. This is where the whole setup was. And he was in the wine press doing this. The wine press was not the place for threshing wheat, but he was afraid. He was afraid of the Midianites. He was afraid of what he was called to do, so he was hiding and threshing wheat in the wine press. So see, what ended up happening is he was getting wheat. He was getting results. It's not like he was sinning. God was blessing him with wheat, but not as much wheat as he could have had. See, if he would have taken a step out of faith and he would have moved to the threshing floor to thresh that wheat, think of how much more wheat he could have had. So he was taking all that God had intended for him, and he was confining it and making it much smaller than what it could have been. So he was looking at his circumstances. He was not looking at his potential. He was not fulfilling his purpose. And then something else I want you to see is that he continually questioned God. I haven't gone into the whole story with you, but just to give you a brief overview. In verse 17, it says, Gideon replied, "If you are truly going to help me, show me a sign to prove that it is really the Lord speaking to me. Don't go away until I come back and bring my offering to you." So here's his first time. He's testing God. He's afraid. He's been asked to do something really big here. But again, he almost wishes maybe it would be better off if I didn't know that was what I was supposed to do. So he questions God. Well, God proves himself to him. Then later on, he says it again in verse 36. Then Gideon said to God, "If you are truly going to use me to rescue Israel as you promised, prove it to me in this way." And then he gives him another challenge. And God once again comes through. And he shows Gideon that he is real and he really is leading him. And then in verse 39, then Gideon said to God, "Please don't be angry with me, but let me make one more request. Let me use the fleece for one more test." So 3 times he questioned God. Now, one other thing I want you to see about that is not only did he continually question God, but God continually stayed. God continually showed himself. See, God didn't walk away when Gideon lost his faith, but he continually tried to push Gideon into what he was supposed to do, and Gideon ended up becoming this amazing leader. And he did, in fact, help lead the Israelites away from the Midianites and help to defeat them. How many of you have ever felt like Gideon in your life? You've been in a place where you are dealing with circumstances and you feel like you're supposed to do something, but it just seems impossible. Anybody ever felt that way before? Probably most of you. If you haven't, there will probably come a time when you will. I know I experienced that for the last 10 years of my life. 10 years ago, I had this vision that God gave me of this ministry that he wanted me to lead. And at the time, I was pretty young, and so it seemed amazing. I was fearless. I can't wait. I was ready to tell the whole world about this ministry. I knew I was going to go speak to youth groups, and I was going to take a traveling team, and they were going to minister in drama and dance and music, and then I was going to have this multi-million-dollar facility, and in it, youth were going to come from all over, and there were going to be people that would come in and do concerts and local events, and then I would take them on missions trips all over the world. All my passions rolled up into one. Yay, God, I can't wait to do this. And then reality set in, and I'm like, well, that costs this much money, and I don't know how to do that, and I have to find the people, and da-da-da-da. And I then start to basically show God my circumstances. Well, I think you kind of messed up a little bit. Maybe I just was dreaming one night, and I had this really amazing fantasy about what could be so cool. And reality starts to set in. I go through college, and but let me tell you one thing here. That the very next day, after I had this vision, I call my husband, who, we're not married at that point. We were almost engaged at that point. And I told him about this amazing vision. And he tells me he had the same vision. Okay? Now, just putting it out there, kind of like with Moses going through the parted sea, that should have been a pretty clear-cut sign that God was in this, right? So he tells me he has the same amazing vision, and it's confirmation, but then life goes on. And I start to walk away from it. I start to question God. Well, God, look at my circumstances. I can't do that. Where is that money going to come from? How am I going to get myself out there? I don't know how to do this. If you really want me to do this, then prove it. I did just what Gideon did. Just make it happen. Just do this, open a door, and then I'll know. Well, see, God wants us to take that step of faith. He wants us to step out. See, I was designed for something specific, and God revealed it to me, but I was too afraid to step into it. So 10 years later, here I am. Now, I'm not saying that I was living a bad life for the last 10 years. I wasn't living in sin, but I was living in mediocrity. See, kind of like Gideon threshing that wheat in the winepress instead of the threshing floor. I was blessed. I had a good job. I've been doing, pretty good things. I've worked in the ministry. I was working for my church still at that time, but it wasn't where I was supposed to be. See, God had something specific for my life, and he knew if I didn't do it, who was going to do it? if he didn't send me, he was going to have to send somebody else. But I was the one designed to do it. So if he had to send somebody else, it would be God's second best for that thing. And I wouldn't want to be responsible for getting to heaven and saying, okay, here I am, God, and him saying, well done, but you could have done more. See this thing right here? Look at this amazing thing over here. That was supposed to be yours. If you would have done it, it would have been this. I don't want to be in that place. And so it hit me about 6 months ago. I was in a real tough place in my life. I've been all over the world. I've traveled all over the world in missions. I've been to Africa. I've been to China. I've been really fortunate. And now at this point in my life, I had been moving around the country doing different things. And God had really orchestrated everything that I had done. I went from, my degree's in music business, so I had a lot of background in the music industry, and I know pretty much every Christian music artist that's out there. And then, so that was a really great way of making contacts. See, God was setting all of this up. And then I go and I become a teacher, so I get a lot of one-on-one time with students and really developing relationships with them and developing that ability to really teach. And then he puts me working with a gospel music artist who runs an orphanage in Africa. And so I really get the opportunity to see how that works and how her booking went with her ministry. And then I end up in Christian radio for a while, and I work in radio. So again, a lot of contacts and a lot of ways to get myself out there, and back in teaching now, and I've been in a lot of different churches doing fine arts. So again, it's not like I was not doing anything right. God was setting me up so that when he was ready to say go, I was ready to go. I had everything that I needed. So about 6 months ago, I'm in a really rough patch. I'm just saying, okay, God, this can't be it. This cannot be it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like teaching. I love teaching. I love kids. But there has to be more than this. I'm teaching. I'm working for my church. I've got a lot of different things going on. I was coaching cheerleading and all these different things. And I'm sitting in my bathroom floor, basically crying, because I'm saying to myself, there has to be more. This can't be it. I'm working all these jobs, and the money's barely coming in. Like, we have just enough to get by, and this is going to be it the rest of my life. Like, every single day of my life is going to be, where's the next, how are we paying the next bill? I'm a teacher. You only make so much in teaching. For those of you who want to be a teacher, God bless you. There's not a lot of money. You do it because you love it. You don't do it for the money. And so I was sitting there crying, and I'm saying, God, what more is there than this? This can't be it. And I heard God clear as day say, you can never receive the fullest potential of my blessing until you step into the fullest potential of my calling. Wow. Wow. That was life-changing. Truly life-changing. When I heard God say that, I said, this is so true. I mean, I am blessed. We're very fortunate. We're very blessed. We have a lot of great things and a lot of great opportunities. But there's more. But I can never achieve the fullest potential of God's blessing. I can never receive that. And I'm not just talking about money here. I want you to understand that. I'm talking about just God's blessing, God's covering. You can never receive the fullest potential of it until you step into the fullest potential of my calling. Wow. So at that point, once God tells you to go, you better go. So at that point, I go and I start just putting my name out there and start working up this whole plan of exactly how I'm going to make it happen. And I go back to the way I was, just being fearless, like God's in this now. I'm going for it. And I'm here to tell you today that since that moment, I've not lacked. All those worries that I had, my money situation hasn't changed as far as what's coming in, but God's just completely provided. See, as soon as you step into what you're destined to do, God paves the way. And so I'm here to tell you tonight that you are each designed for something. I don't know you. I don't know what it is. You might be meant to go work in the medical field. You might be meant to be a missionary. Maybe you're meant to be a teacher or a politician. But whatever it is, you specifically were meant to do that thing. Nobody else but you. And just like me, I wouldn't want you to one day stand before God and him say, well done, but you could have done more. Here's what I had for you. I had to send somebody else in your place because you didn't go. See, some of you tonight, you're young. And so you're kind of fearless right now, and you maybe think you can do anything. But as you get older, you might start to let reality set in and look at your circumstances. But I'm here to tell you that your circumstances don't matter. Because if you only looked at your circumstances, where would God be in all of that? See, if we only lived in our circumstances, if everything was peachy all the time and easy, then we wouldn't need God. That's where God comes in. God becomes real to us when we are like that wheat. See, that process of threshing, that word threshing, it refers to a beating. That wheat goes through a beating process. All the garbage in the wheat is taken away. So all that's left is perfect, pure wheat. The word threshing, I was so excited when I found this out a few weeks ago. The word threshing in the Bible comes from the word tribulation. It's amazing to me because every trial and tribulation that we go through is that process of threshing. God's allowing all that excess, that stuff that's blocking who we are, like what our core is. He allows all of that to be pushed away, pushed to the side, so that all that's left is his perfect design. And all that threshing has to happen so that you can just have your perfect design left to go forth and do what he's called you to do. If all that garbage wasn't taken away and you didn't go through that beating, then where would God be in all that? How would you know that God had created you to be what you are? So that just, to me, that was an amazing revelation. I know for me personally, when I wake up in the morning, I want the devil to say, oh no, she's awake. That's what I want him to say. Because if he says that, then I know I'm doing something right. He's afraid of what I'm going to do. See, he's afraid of every single person in here because he knows that you've been designed and charged with a purpose. He knows that. And so when you're just backing away from your purpose and you're not stepping out, he doesn't have to worry about you. You're no threat to him. But see, when you're going through that threshing, it's because you are exactly where you're supposed to be. He is afraid of what you're going to accomplish with your life. He's terrified of you. And I want him to be terrified of me because I know that I was born with greatness. I was born to do something great for the kingdom of God. And so every morning when he says that, when I wake up, I know I'm doing something right. And so I charge you to let that be your goal. That when you wake up in the morning, you can smile knowing, he's afraid of me today. Because he doesn't know what I'm going to do today. I mean, I could do anything today. He doesn't know. He is terrified. He is shaking in his boots. And that's exactly the way that it should be. I'm going to tell you a little story. So when I was about 6, probably about the age I was when I came here, I was kind of a mischievous kid. I don't know if they remember that aspect of me at all. I was pretty mischievous, and I still am. I'm kind of known as like a little bit of a prankster. Like April Fool's Day is my favorite day of the whole year. But when I was about 6 years old, my Uncle Alan, he would come and watch us during the day when my dad would go to work. And to me, there was no greater joy in the world than tormenting him. Like, I loved just the reaction that I would get when I would do something bad, and he would get all mad, and he didn't know how to handle it, and that to me was just great. And so every day, as soon as my dad would leave, I'd smile nicely, bye, Daddy, and then as soon as he was gone, I would take off down the street. My uncle would be freaking out because I'm a little 6-year-old girl who's now taken off, running around the neighborhood, and I'd be gone all day. I wouldn't come back. I would just wander the neighborhood, go play with my friends, and he would just be panicked. But the funniest part of the whole thing to me at the time was that my little brother, who was about 2, would follow me everywhere I would go. So when I would go walking out of the house, sprinting down the road, here would come my little brother in like his little Superman underwear, just nothing but his underwear, coming chasing me out the door. And then my uncle's really freaking out because he doesn't have any kids of his own. So he still doesn't. But this is his experience with children. I was kind of awful. So I threw a Lego at his head once. Yes. So I would go taking off down the street. My little brother would come chasing after me. This was like a daily thing. And so, of course, who does he try to catch? Well, my little brother, because he's 2, and he's half naked and much more, not knowing where he's going. He's just trying to chase me, and he can't catch me. So he needs to get him in the house. I at least know my way around, and I'll find my way back. Well, one day he got this revelation that he didn't need to catch my brother. He needed to catch me. That was the key. Because see, if he caught me, my brother would come following. And so he outsmarted me. So I take off running one day. Well, he comes running after me, catching me. And I'm like, why is he chasing me? Why isn't he chasing Jimmy? And so he grabs me. And then, of course, here comes my little brother, like waddling back to the house as I'm like kicking and flailing and the whole bit. And so, but what I realized about this story, now my uncle tells this story at every family gathering, like he just really enjoys it. It's like, just something he feels like he really accomplished something there. But one thing that I really got out of this, at an older age is that our life is kind of just like that. The devil knows that we're the one he has to catch. Because all the people that are going to follow us, all the people whose lives we're going to impact, if he can catch us, he can stop us from reaching any of those people. He doesn't have to go after them because he can go after us, and we're the ones that are going to reach them. But luckily for us, we serve a God who's smarter than the devil, and God knows the same thing. See, he knows he's got to get a hold of us so that we can reach all those other people in whatever capacity that is. It doesn't mean that everybody's meant to be in ministry, but our lives are to be a reflection of Christ in everything that we do. And so every day of your life, everything that you do should be reflecting Christ and all the people that you can reach along the way. And so as I'm telling you this story, I'm thinking of other people in the Bible that kind of experienced the same thing. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of Samuel, but Samuel, he was the one who went to Jesse, who was the father of David. God told Samuel, I'm going to bring you the next king, and he told him what family it was going to come from. So he goes to this family, and all the sons come out, and he says, no, you're not the next king. No, it's not you. No, you look pretty big and strong, but you're not it either. And he goes all the way down the line, and he looks at Jesse, and he says, this can't be all of your sons. God told me it was going to come from your family, but it's none of these. So where's your other son? And he says, oh, well, I do have another son, but he's kind of weak. Like, he's a little shepherd boy. He's the younger one. Like, it can't be him. Like, he smells. So he goes and he gets David, and Samuel says, that's the one. That's the one that I picked. Well, see, God knew he had to get Samuel where he needed to be, or we might never have had a King David. Samuel was chosen to go find David. See, Samuel didn't do all the great things that we hear about that David did, but he was chosen to pick David. If he hadn't listened to God, David might never have become king, because he was the one who took David and started teaching him exactly how he needed to be. He brought him into the king's court so that he could basically become what would be the next king. And then going even farther back than that, Samuel's mother, Hannah, she couldn't have a child. And God continually told her, you will have a child, you will have a child. And she pressed on and prayed and prayed and prayed. Well, if she hadn't continued to press on and pray, she might never have had Samuel. And then we might never have had King David. See, God has destined each of us for something. If we don't step out and do what we've been called to do, who's going to do it? We all have been chosen. We've all been designed with purpose. How many of you in here have ever seen the movie The Lorax that just came out? Anybody in here seen that? All right, well, you have to go see it, and I'm going to try to not spoil it too much, but I am going to use it as an example, and you're going to want to go see it for sure. Dr. Seuss was a pretty wise man. I was fortunate to get to go see it a few weeks ago when it first came out. Read Across America Day. Our whole middle school went to go see it at the theater. Well, basically the story, anyone read the book? All right, good. I'm glad people still read today. This is exciting. Basically, the story of the Lorax, you've got this guy named the Onceler, and he has this great multi-million-dollar idea, this invention, and it requires the use of trees. So he starts chopping down all these trees so that he can make this invention, which is kind of silly. But all these people start buying it until eventually there are no trees left. And if there are no trees left, well, then there's no more anything to make this product. So he ends up going out of business. So the whole story is about this little boy named Ted. He's just not anybody special. He's just a little boy. And he's really curious about trees, though. He wants to understand what they used to be, because they now live in a world where there aren't any, and no one talks about them. This was years ago that trees existed, and now they have these plastic trees that turn color in the different seasons with lights, and they think, well, why would you want a tree with dirt and all that? You can have this perfect, brand new model of a tree. But he wants to know the truth. And so he ends up traveling outside of town to go visit the Onceler, the guy who originally destroyed all the trees. And he goes every day back and forth to learn more and to learn more. And he gets totally threshed the whole time. Because see, now what's happened is there's a new guy that's in charge, and he knows that without trees you can't have air. And so he sells air. And he knows if trees come back, he'll go out of business. He can't sell air. And so he tries to stop Ted from doing what he wants to do. He wants to stop him from learning the truth. And so they chase him, and he goes through all these obstacles every day to get to the Onceler. And then finally the Onceler gets to the end of the story to explaining how this all happened. And he hands him a seed. And he says, "Here, this is the last one." And so Ted takes this seed and he says, "What am I going to do with this? This is just one little seed. Like, how is this going to change anything?" And the Onceler says, "It might be small and insignificant, but it's not what it is. It's what it will become." See, that's our lives. We don't look at our circumstances. If we did, look at a seed. What does it do? It's just a seed. But it's not until you put it in the ground and you water it, and then it reproduces more and more and more. And think of all that becomes. So it's not what it is, it's what it will become. And so if I can leave you with anything tonight, it's that when you go out of here and you go on to your tomorrow and next week and all through your life, that you remember that you are that seed, that you were designed for a specific thing. Every seed is different. Every seed grows into something different. Different size, different shape. You were designed with purpose. Like I said, I wouldn't want to be that person who gets to the end of the road and says, "I messed up. Like, I had a purpose and I didn't live it because I was afraid." We get caught up with doubt and distractions and fear. And I charge you tonight, don't let that be you. Don't be that person. I don't care if you are 12. I don't care if you're 82. It's never too late to step into what God has called you to do. I don't know about you tonight, but if you feel that tugging, if you've ever felt that tugging to go and do, go do. Because if you've got God on your side, how can you fail? See, that's where we get ourselves into trouble, when we start to question and we ask God. In 1 Peter 4:10, one of my favorite verses, it says, "God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another." That's the foundation of my entire fine arts portion of my ministry. So 412 Ministries is the name of our ministries, which of course is based on 1 Timothy 4:12, which says, "Do not let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example to the believers in faith, in life, in speech, in love, and in purity." I don't care how old you are. If you're young, God used young people in the Bible. We just talked about Samuel. We talked about David. Jeremiah was a young prophet. Mary is believed to have birthed Jesus when she was between the ages of 12 and 14. That's amazing. Jesus was young when he first started going out and preaching. So I don't care how old you are tonight. You were charged with a purpose. And so 1 Peter 4:10, which talks about how you each were blessed with a gift, go out and use them. Whatever it is tonight, I encourage you, step out. Don't be afraid. Go ahead and stand with me tonight. You just bow your head and close your eyes. Tonight, if you're in this room and you, in any way, have felt like you've either messed up, you've missed it, you've doubted, whatever it may be, I want you to give it to God tonight. If you know that you've been called for a specific purpose. You may not know what it is yet, and that's okay, because God doesn't reveal that to us always at a very young age. Maybe you do know, and you're just afraid. But if you know that you've been called for something, I want you to lift both hands up to God, and I want you to cry out to Him, I am designed. I am designed. See, when we say that in faith, we begin to let go of all the doubts, of all the fear. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Father God. Tonight, I want to pray with you. Any of you who are in here tonight who maybe are at that place where you're ready to step out and you're ready to say, God, use me. I don't know what you have for me, but use me however you want to use me. I want you to step out in boldness tonight. And I want to pray with you because I've been in your place. I know what that's like to not know, or to know and be even more afraid of that. I've been there, been on both sides. So tonight, I want you to step out in faith. If that's you tonight, come on down here. I want to pray with you. My husband wants to pray with you. Don't be afraid. This is your way of saying, God, use me. Use me. I'm not afraid. Thank you, Jesus. I know there's somebody in here tonight. Thank you. I know there are more. I know that because, like I said, I've been in your shoes. It can be a really scary thing.